Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilove, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And today I have the most amazing guest. I swear she is my soul sister. I found this woman online. I guess I stalked her just a little bit, but she is absolutely amazing. Her name is Carolyn Feig. She is a physical therapist, a Feldenkrais practitioner, a Pilates instructor, and she does Tai Chi. So she is a martial artist. She's even from a small town in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, a small town in Western Pennsylvania. She is from the central part of the state. So I am so glad I found her, and she agreed to be my guest today. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on the show because I really didn't think that there was anybody else around who was as crazy as I am, becoming the PT, the Feldenkrais, the Pilates, the martial arts. And I would love for you to share your journey, because when someone sees your bio and they see all the amazing things that you're doing, they're thinking, oh my gosh, it must have been so easy for her. And what a wonderful journey that this was. So was it easy?
Oh, that's interesting. The thing I think people assume is easy is the self-employment part, actually, more than the becoming a physical therapist. But was it easy? No. PT school, firstly, was not easy. Did you think it was easy?
Oh, I thought PT school was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, it was not easy.
The happiest day of my life was when we graduated, and it was May 25th, 1996, a day that will live in infamy.
It was not easy, but there actually were parts of it that do feel sort of easy, because there were times where I was so impassioned that it just felt like moving downhill. Mm-hmm. But the beginning, not so much.
Where did you go to school?
What happened was I went through my college degree, which was psychology and Judaic studies combined. And so I was actually enrolled after college in a PhD program. I was interested in cognitive science, cognitive psychology. And I was working in a neuroimaging lab at NYU that studied memory. And at night I was teaching Pilates. So in the daytime I was working in this lab, and at night I was teaching Pilates. And it just sort of made a decision that I didn't want to work in a research lab, and that the ability to teach someone Pilates was actually so in line with what was interesting to me about cognitive science. And I remember just really simple things at the time, like I would teach the class and I would say to the students, raise your arm overhead, and everyone was lying on their back. And so to some people that meant raise your arm to the ceiling, and to some people that meant raise your arm back, like towards the floor. And it occurred to me that you're basically looking at someone's brain when you're watching them move. You're basically seeing their way of learning to interact, or the way they understand movement is also the way they learn. So that was the beginning. So it was never, I liked to exercise. I started running when I was in high school, but that was really the thing that really drew me, actually, was the cognitive piece. So
it's really interesting, because somebody even asked me this the other day, that I talk about the art of movement. And that's exactly what you're describing, is that, you can put on your running shoes and go out for a run or start beating yourself up at the gym. But there's definitely that mind-body connection. When you start to connect with that, that's when magic really happens.
Yep, no question.
And is that what brought you to Feldenkrais?
So what happened was, while I had to go back and take prerequisites to get into PT school, and so that was, like 2 years of torture, and then it was 3 more years of PT school and taking chemistry or physics or any of those things. And I really needed an artistic outlet. And so I was constantly, to learn the brachial plexus, I was just making big drawings all over my apartment. I was writing short stories. I was just trying to always nourish my artistic side. And so when I got to school, we had to fill out forms to ask what kind of clinical rotation we wanted. And I actually remember writing in all caps, like anything alternative, on the form. I just wanted something that would nourish that other piece. So I had my first clinical rotation with a Feldenkrais practitioner.
Wow.
And that was wow. And actually, I want to tell you, I'll never forget this. It was a life-changing experience, but he would say to me all the time about physical therapy, he would say it's the greatest profession in the world. Can you imagine that sort of influence while you're in your first rotation? It was so nice to hear because I was exhausted as a student. So
a lot of what I would hear, we would kind of get beaten down.
At clinical rotations, absolutely.
It was terrible. And it's just so refreshing to hear that anything alternative, and that the school responded to that. I mean, I don't know if it's because of where I got my degree or because it was 25 years ago that they did not think alternative at all. And at the time when I got into physical therapy school, I wasn't a Pilates instructor, but I had done Pilates as a self-healing tool for over 13 years. So I knew it very, very well. And I would talk about it to my classmates, my clinical instructors, my professors, and say, Pilates is just the bomb. It's just so wonderful and incredible. And I would get poo-pooed. And they would say, well, yeah, it's good for dancers, but really nobody else. And then 10-15 years later, was the rehab community found Pilates, and it was like they invented it and they owned it.
I had the same experience as you. With regards to Pilates too. I was a Pilates trainer when I was in PT school, and there was a lot I wanted to contribute Pilates related, and no one was interested. The Feldenkrais was really through a staff member that happened to be friends with someone who owned a clinic who had a Feldenkrais. You know how those things, that's how things happen sometimes, So it was just, I got extremely lucky. But with the Pilates, I sort of came into school thinking that there would already be this big acceptance of Pilates. I wasn't aware that they would not see it as rehab focused. And interestingly, I mean, as well as I do, the beginning of Pilates, how Pilates was crafted was actually as a rehab tool. But what I didn't realize was basically that it came to this country around the same time as physical therapy. I had no idea. It's around the same time. So I just think that that's kind of fascinating. This is basically everybody's, trying to figure it out.
It's all movement. It's all connecting with the nervous system through movement. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. Even anxiety, stress, once you can move better and feel more comfortable in your body, it starts to heal and you start to be able to recover.
Yep, absolutely.
When did you decide that you had to become a practitioner?
Yes, so that first rotation really influenced me a lot. So what I have not said yet, actually, I realize is I had a very bad back injury that I got maybe 6 months before graduate school, something like that, before graduate school started. And so I entered into school with a pretty bad back injury, and it made school challenging, and it also made the learning a little bit challenging because, in some ways I was searching for what could actually be helpful with my back, and also just to really become thorough in my learning. So during that rotation, I learned a lot about Feldenkrais, and I will say at the time it did not help my back, but it was so fascinating, the philosophy, that I just thought, it held my attention in this way that, so few things had. And I remember that I went into the Feldenkrais Institute, and the woman working there, who is now a friend of mine, said, you gotta do the training. And I said, well, I don't know if I believe in Feldenkrais. And she said, it's not something you believe in, it's something you experience. And I thought, well, it's a pretty smart answer. So I guess I'll just do it because she's so persistent. And I will say that is what got me out of back pain, was doing that training. And also, just another story about that time was I was going to the Institute once in a while just to take a class here and there. And I remember that I told one of the guys there that I had pretty intense back pain. And he said, can you squat? And I said, yeah, I can squat. And he's like, if you can squat, then you can get out of back pain. And I thought to myself, well, that's a really arrogant thing to say. And now with more education, I also think that even more. But I also think, looking back at the way I reacted to that in my mind, like I wasn't open to the idea that I could get out of pain, and then I did. So
mindset is so powerful, and our belief systems, isn't it?
Oh man. I mean, yeah. And that's what's so amazing about that method, is because you don't just kind of convince yourself of something, you really go through the experience of learning it. And it's a little bit different. So
my back injury, I actually had, I was a chronic pain patient for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't know if I had told you that. That was in my mid-30s before I was a physical therapist. It was an absolute nightmare, but it really influenced my journey, from that point on, because I was basically kind of written off by the medical community, of which I was a part of because I was a respiratory therapist. And in 2.5 years, I kept doing all the right things, going to all the doctor's appointments, massage therapist, the physical therapist, taking all the medications, doing all the exercises and the stretches. And instead of getting better, I just kept getting worse and worse and worse until I was told I would never be able to do my laundry and my grocery shopping all in the same day because I would end up being bedridden. And the doctor that told me that, I looked at her and I says, you don't understand, I'm planning on going back to ballet class. And she laughed in my face and said, you don't understand. You're a chronic pain patient. You will never have the life you had before. And she knew I was thinking about going to PT school. And she goes, you forget about PT school, because even if you could do it, which you can't, you're just way too old.
Wow. So was that like fuel for you to just be like, I'm going to get better and go to PT school?
Eventually, yes, it was, because then she told me to start applying for disability. And I'm like, oh my God, I was 36 years old. So I went home, I hit rock bottom, and it took a few days. And then I realized, look, you got to figure this out on your own. I wasn't a PT, of course. I didn't have any Feldenkrais experience. I had an innate understanding that it was obvious nobody else was helping me. I had to help myself. So I fired everybody, my entire medical team, stopped taking the meds, stopped doing the exercises and the stretches because they weren't working. And I went back to Pilates on my own. I knew enough of the mat work. I had done it for years. So I dissected a lot of the basic, the beginning Pilates mat exercises. I took them apart. I would get down on the floor every day and I would really pay attention to my movement patterns, the quality of movement, again, the mind-body connection, and realized what was helping me move, what was making me hurt.
Wow.
Being able to put that all together. And I added acupuncture, and that's the only thing I did. And that it took about 9 months, but I did get out of pain. And as soon as I got out of pain was when I got accepted to PT school.
Right. Wow. That just, when you said that, made me realize probably what kind of clinician you are too, because that just being able to notice what's helping and what's hurting is such a big piece of being able to get better. And it's like, I don't want to say it's often overlooked, but it certainly could be, it's not so easy. It takes focus.
And that's basically what I would do with my clients, is just teach them how to do that and teach them how to fix themselves and to be able to recognize things. So, but it's interesting because then, after PT school and, I I hated traditional PT. So I ended up opening up my own clinic specializing in Pilates-based rehab and conditioning. And it was shortly after that, I had like this huge trauma, more pain in a different way, you know, a lot of physical pain and dysfunction. It was absolutely a nightmare. Headaches like you wouldn't believe, you know, weekly headaches that would knock me out for about 2 days. And I mean, it was just a horrible time of my life. And that's when I found Feldenkrais, although I had heard about it for so many years. And, you know, there were a few practitioners in town. So I thought, I'm going to take a class and see what this is like. I took a 3-day seminar, a 3-day workshop, Feldenkrais for dancers, a woman from, I think she's in Taos, New Mexico. And she was coming up to Denver to do this Feldenkrais for dancers 3-day seminar. And by the end of the first day, it was like, I have got to do this. I have got to become a practitioner.
Wow. Yeah. And did you have a whole 4-year training?
Yes, I did.
4 years long?
But yeah. It took me a while to get it took me a while to get into the training, because when I realized it was a 4-year long training and that it involved 2 weeks every 3 months for 4 years, I would have to go to a different city because they didn't have anything in Denver, pay for the airfare, the room and board, plus the tuition, plus missing all that work. It was just financially prohibitive. Although I wanted to do it so bad, and I was still paying off my PT, you know, school loan.
Right.
And I said, if they ever have a training come to Denver, I'm going to sign up for it. And as soon as I've heard there was a training coming to Denver, I was their first student that applied to the program.
Awesome.
So
yeah, that's amazing.
But it's so fascinating, because during the 4 year, and you know what the Feldenkrais training is like, it's so different from PT school. Because you are experiencing everything along the way in your own body. And got rid of my headaches. I was able to find out where they were coming from. My entire life changed with Feldenkrais training.
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, it's rare that I like have pain or something, but you know, once in a while something will happen that will rattle my body or my nervous system or something. And I had like a stomach issue last year, and I just started doing some Feldenkrais, and it helped so much. And it's just such a amazing thing to have that tool at your disposal, to just be able to say, you know, I don't feel right, let me do a little of this. It's just incredible. And these are things that are so baffling to people, how to feel better from. So I think it's incredible too.
It's such a powerful modality. And after I finished my training, I said that my mission was to, you know, I kind of made a joke of it, because when people hear the word Feldenkrais, they think
it doesn't sound good. No, I hate the name. The name is not good.
Yeah, it really isn't. And people get really twitchy. I even had one of my closest friends who I hung out with a little group of women in PT school that were all 13, 14 years younger than me, because the few people that were my age were kind of boring. But anyway, I would hang out with these girls, and, you know, we became really, really good friends. And after I became a practitioner, and I was looking all over town where I could do, in-services and presentations to other medical practices. So I finally did. She got me into, it was Press St. Luke's, the rehab department, to give a presentation and a class on Feldenkrais, even though she was poo-pooing it the whole time. And she said, so it isn't like hanging crystals or all this, you know, voodoo type of stuff. And I looked at her and I said, Cindy, you know me well enough. Would I be spending 4 years of my life, all that time, energy, and money into something that was woo-woo? And she says, probably not. So halfway during this presentation, it was going really well. And I was explaining the neurological component of it with the neuroplasticity. And of course, the OTs and the speech therapists were going crazy because they really understood it. They get so much neurology in their education.
Yes.
And at one point, one of them turned and looked at her and said, see, we told you so. I thought, why did you even bring me in here if you didn't believe it?
That's a beautiful story. It's not the easiest thing to teach to a room of academics, that's for sure. But I understand what you're saying about the OTs. I find it's amazing how OTs are really tapped into, you know, the idea of expanding your learning some of the stuff they do just really is so exciting and interesting to me, and really in line with some of the stuff we learn in Feldenkrais. So, but yeah, PT school is a little bit different in that way. I don't think we definitely have something called neuromuscular education, neuromuscular re-education, with many components in that, but there's something missing in the I don't want to say there's something missing. It's incredible. I mean, it's amazing and incredible, but there's something that is not talked about in the finding of things. It's much more either controlling or achieving, or, you know, there's a lot of making things happen. Whereas in the Feldenkrais, it was really new to me. That sort of, it wasn't new. I mean, I'd already taken like cranial sacral therapy. I'd already taken a lot of different courses, but really to get into it in a way where you're finding new movements is a whole nother level. Yeah, that was pretty great. Yeah.
That is a really good way of putting it. So thanks for explaining it and going a little bit deeper, because, you know, it's hard for me to articulate, but the difference between,
it
you
is
know,
hard.
In PT school, it's like, okay, this is the diagnosis, this is the diagnosis code, this is the protocol, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, you can have some fantastic practitioners coming out of that. But when you go deep into the why of it. And really figuring it out on more of it's almost like on a molecular level.
Yeah, it's sort of, it is. Yeah, exactly. It's like giving yourself the time to really like see what's here, you know, because the thing is, like, when you're learning to do something, when you're learning an exercise, you're really going on what you think is there. You know, you're kind of doing something based on a sort of idea you have in your mind, like this bone turns this way, this muscle works, this, right? But like in a context like Feldenkrais, when you have so much time, then you have that time to understand for yourself, like, oh, that bone is not where I thought it was, which is probably why that exercise never really worked, or whatever, you know, whatever it is. That's just one of many examples. But
I'll never forget, at the very beginning of my training, you know, it's probably the first segment or the first or second segment, but it was early in the training. And I remember, you know, those magic words when they say, lie on your back, and you just lie on your back on the mat and go, oh.
And you go to another place.
And I remember it was Dennis, and he was, you know, talking, and he would get very tangential a lot of times. And he said, well, you know, when you start, you just lie on your back, and all of a sudden, you know, your body chemistry changes, and the blood levels changes, and the hormones that you're secreting. And I thought, that is so stupid. I didn't believe that at all. I'm rolling my eyes going, there's no way that happens. And then it took a few months, and it was like, aha, that's why this works so
something
well.
Really is. Yeah. That something is shifting hormonally, you know, whatever it is, vascularly, whatever it is. Yes, definitely.
I know a lot of people have that kind of experience with meditation, and I don't know about you, but I can't meditate. I cannot sit still and let go of everything. And people would say, but that's what it's for. That's why you need to do it. But when I do a Feldenkrais lesson, it's moving meditation, and it just, I can let go of anything and everything that's bothering me.
Yeah. It's funny. I was having that conversation with someone recently. It is amazing how quickly it puts you in a place, whereas meditating is a little more effortful in that way, that kind of focus that you need. Yeah. It's I think in meditation, sometimes they talk about different kind of focus, like loose focus versus like focusing specifically on a repetitive breath or whatever. So I think that maybe like that is more of what it is, a different kind of, you know, letting go sort of focus. Yeah.
And I remember one of my teachers saying, you know, could have been Dennis, it could have been anybody, but that practitioners, you can tell as soon as they get on the mat, boom, they get into that zone.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you're learning it, and the student in us, you know, we're just kind of moving around like, you know, crazy people. And I thought, oh, well, whatever. He's just being, elitist about the practitioners. And it wasn't until I was a practitioner and I went to a couple of trainings and just see the difference between us and the new students. It's like, okay, I get it. I mean, all I have to do now is I can roll out my mat and just go, before I even lie down on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep. There are a few things like that between someone who's newer to the method and someone who's been doing it a long time. And I will say one thing that has really like changed forever. I don't know. I think this one's forever, is not doing something because someone tells you to with your body, and that sort of ownership. And I remember during my training, again, this was while I was injured, but I remember my teacher, David Burson, was giving us an instruction, because as you know, as it's taught, you're given different instructions and you move according to that instruction. And he said, you may feel like I'm asking you to do something, but actually I'm not. And for some reason, I guess because I was so hypnotized and like so in another place at that moment, but it just struck me in this way that like, yeah, he's not, like he's giving me an instruction and I can choose if I want to do it, how I want to do it, what works best for me. Like all that was such like, wow. And then I think that's forever. I don't think I could go into a class and really just do what a teacher tells me at my own expense, too old for that shit.
Oh, amen to that. It's just so funny that you say that, because I'll never forget. And I tell people this all the time. And I told Dennis when I said goodbye at the end of the training that the most powerful thing I learned in Feldenkrais over those 4 years was how to say no.
Oh yeah, you said it. Yep.
And he told us the funniest story, which I will not repeat now because there was definitely the F-bomb in it, but it was hilarious. And I was in the zone and I was kind of mesmerized. And he's telling this story and I'm following along. When he came to the punchline, I just sat up and went, oh my God, that's it. I can say no. And from then on, it was my favorite word.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Yes.
This has been so much fun being able to talk about Feldenkrais, because I have wanted for a long time to have another practitioner on the show, somebody I could talk to. But yeah, you're the first one. So thank you so much for talking about this. And I wanted to move on. You had your undergraduate degree in psychology and Judaic studies.
Yep.
So I find that really interesting with the Judaic studies and Feldenkrais, because of the connection between, Moshe Feldenkrais. Where was he? From the Ukraine, immigrated by foot to Israel.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
By himself.
I think wasn't he was pushing his wife in a wheelbarrow over the border or something. I once read a story. Yeah.
Well, that was later.
Oh, that was later.
When he immigrated at the age of 14 by foot, by himself. His family didn't know for months where he was.
Oh, that's right. Yes. And then he collected people along the way, didn't he? Yes.
He did. So to give the audience perspective, this was 1914, because he was born in 1900. So at the age of 14, and there's no cell phones, and he couldn't call home or internet or whatever. But and he would collect people, and to earn money, he would perform, like doing acrobatic and shows and stuff, and collect these people along the way, and some would drop off, and then he'd get more and stuff. So the connection between the Jewish community and Feldenkrais is huge. I mean, that's where it was born.
It's huge. And he also, where he's from in Ukraine, is the same region where the Baal Shem Tov is from, who's sort of considered the leader of Hasidism, which is, a form of orthodoxy that is very passion focused and very, there are good words out there. They're escaping me to describe this community. But anyway, he's from the area where Hasidism took root. And so the teaching, I don't know if people that don't have experience with Jewish learning would pick up on this, but even the way you said Dennis Leary was very tangential, that is a very rabbinic way of teaching. So it's like you sort of get to a reference point, and then you kind of get into a bunch of different layers and stories that seem like, where are you going? That has nothing to do with anything. And then at some point kind of pull it back in and come back to that reference point. So yeah, that was a very familiar thing, kind of being in an experience like that. So
I absolutely loved that, because up until that point in my life, and so I was in my late 40s when I started training, up until that point in my life, everything that I had done was good or bad, right or wrong, black or white,
yes,
and
right.
it was absolute. And the freedom of having that kind of interest, curiosity, exploration was just so liberating.
Yeah, it is liberating. You're right. And there's something about it. There's something about like asking a question and detaching from the answer for a while, giving space. That, yeah, it does. It makes it stronger. It makes it, that space is yeah, like you say, there's like curiosity and play in there, and then it becomes so much more robust. So yeah, so that, and also happens to be the same region my father's from. So yeah, so for me, there was a very, like when I would watch the videos of Feldenkrais, there was something very familial, but even my mother's father too, there's something that's just sort of like really sweet in the accent and the mannerisms and all that stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of Jewish influence there. And yeah, I think someone wrote a book about his relationship with Hasidism, actually, the Hasidic roots and how they relate to the method.
I'll have to look for that, because I just find even reading about him is just so fascinating. But it's so interesting. So your dad is from the Ukraine?
Yeah, my dad is from that same mountain region. Yep.
My father was from Czechoslovakia.
Oh, okay. Yes. Same thing.
Grew up on a farm in Czechoslovakia. He and my grandmother came over in 1939 on the last ship out of Calais. So interesting story there. But same thing, when I would hear the accents and stuff, it would just,
it's tender. Makes you,
very much.
Yeah, to me, that's like love, basically, that kind of accent.
So then let's just, the other thing that really impressed me with your undergraduate degree, and it didn't hit me until after you were talking along in the conversation, was there you were doing your prerequisites. And I had to do, even though I had a medical background already and background in biology and physiology and anatomy, all that, I had to go back and redo, a lot of it, my prereqs and stuff all over again. Okay, but I at least had that background.
Yeah,
and right. I couldn't imagine going into chemistry and physics and biology and that kind of detailed anatomy. I had a classmate who actually had been an English major. And of course, she did all the prerequisites, but she was able to do them, at her own pace. So when she got into PT school, she really struggled.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Right. Yeah.
So what was it like?
What, the prerequisite part? That was probably the hardest part, to be honest. Yeah, it was really challenging. And like I say, I'm just so, I would like to learn chemistry. I would just sort of write stories, like to learn about chemical bonds. I would just go into scenarios in my mind about like love and attachment or something I could relate to. I was just constantly looking for that balance, because it's just the way my mind works, I guess. It's like, the physics, my teacher was a poet and he was a musician, and I just liked him. I mean, we would swap CDs. That was CD time. And, I was just constantly looking for the art and everything. I don't know how else to say it, but so that's, I guess, how I got through it. But yeah, it was not easy. It really wasn't. And I live in New York City, and I needed to get these prerequisites in really fast. And as I mentioned, I had to do them intensively. So like, these like shortened, And I was all over. I mean, I took some courses in Brooklyn, some courses in Queens. I was all over in the city, just constantly, like just wherever I could get them. And in some ways, like it was an amazing experience. You know what was amazing about doing the prerequisites as an adult was seeing the nursing students that would go at night, take night classes. They blew my mind. I mean, they'd work all day and then go and study at night. And you see what people like do, how hard people work.
Mm-hmm.
And if I might, sorry, but like how quickly sometimes people are to poo-poo the medical community when people who are studying healthcare and medicine are working so hard to learn so much and like basically just to help people. So I think in some ways, even though it was really hard, it was also humbled and inspired, to say the least. And then when I got to PT school, even more so, because I had already, like I say, I was already a Pilates trainer, and I had a few different Pilates trainings at that point. And I was very well versed in the alternative community. I was already practicing a lot of Tai Chi. I was already a cranial sacral therapist. There were many things. And when I got to PT school, I was just blown away that I was in this, you know, room with all these people that were so selfless and, you know, just wanted to go into hospitals and help sick children and do these amazing things. I'd never experienced anything like that before.
Not only the dedication and the selflessness of wanting to go into hospitals, nursing homes, working with children who, you know, might not even make it. It's really the emotional toll on an individual. People don't really realize it. Plus, how difficult and how competitive it is to get into PT school.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's certainly not easy to get in.
No, it's not. And it's not easy to get through it either. So where did the Tai Chi come in?
So the Tai Chi started, I guess in 2005 must have been. That I started, a friend was practicing, and I thought, well, I'd like to learn that. I didn't know anything about it. And it turned out it was the best thing for me to get through PT school with. It was the best thing. And sometimes I would go and practice in the courtyard, you know, while people were in class. I don't like that. I mean, it's true. But it helped me to focus. And I even remember during my boards, you know, to pass the licensure exam, I practiced in the bathroom. You know, it helped my focus so much. So at that time, Tai Chi for me was much more about focus than it was about the physical aspect of it. But now I really see tremendous gain, because the longer I practice, the stronger I'm getting. And I don't know that I understood Tai Chi to really be strength building in the beginning, because, you know, here I was in my 20s, you know, just, I didn't really see it that way. So.
Well, it's like any other practice. The more you do it and the longer you do it, the better you get at it. And the more that you go deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I'm curious too, if, because, you know, of course, we've had a rough year. Everybody knows that. It's no secret. And I'm wondering too, if the Feldenkrais and the Tai Chi, but especially the Tai Chi, did it help you through some of these rough times? Because I know you've had to probably shut down and not work. And
man, did it ever. Yes, both the Feldenkrais and the Tai Chi helped, but the Tai Chi really, kept me balanced and centered. You know, when this first happened, and it was like, wow, I went to Prospect Park. I live very close to Prospect Park, which is a major park here in New York City. And New York City, as you know, is very fast paced. And I went and I just thought, I got to practice some Tai Chi. And there's a big loop where people run, and they were just running so fast and so hard. And I guess that's the way people were dealing with the stress of it. And I just practiced. I probably practiced like 4 hours that first day. I mean, wow. So I think the big piece about Tai Chi is it helps you from getting lost in the chaos. You don't get caught up so much, you know. So yeah, that's been amazing. And for the first time ever, I started teaching patients, because I never felt like I could. But, now with Zoom sort of came up. And so I started, with that.
So tell us how people can find you.
Well, I have my website, which is carolinefeig.com. I also have, it's not a podcast like what you're doing, an interview podcast, but I have a mini little podcast called Jawspace, where I got together with some collaborators and we created a series of lessons to help people to reduce teeth grinding. And it's based off our experience collectively with Feldenkrais. 2 of us are Feldenkrais practitioners, and the third she's an Alexander practitioner. And we just sort of made up these cute little, each lesson is about 6 minutes. So we have that. And I guess that's it. Social media.
I think I saw that on LinkedIn just this morning, the Jawspace.
The Jawspace, yeah, you may have seen that. That would link to a YouTube channel, that particular thing. But if you go on Spotify or wherever you get podcasts, you can sign in and check those out. Yeah.
So is it audio and video or just audio?
It's just audio, which is, the same like what we do with Feldenkrais, which is, difficult. And the difference was on the podcast, there's no music in the background. And on YouTube, we made it with music in the background. So I don't know. We'll see which, maybe you'll let me know which one you like better. Try them out.
So I do want to just take a moment to interject here, because like you said, it's not audio. It's just verbal. And some people might find that a little bit disturbing because they want to see what it's supposed to look like. But that is the one of the principles of Feldenkrais, is that you're not watching somebody move and trying to mimic their movement, because then you're not finding your own movement patterns for yourself. It's you're trying to do something that you think you should do instead of discovering for yourself what you could do. So for anybody who's going to go and listen to those little podcasts, which I would highly recommend them. I haven't seen them myself or read, listened to them myself, but I know they're going to be well worth your while. Just remember to trust yourself, just listen to the words and just explore the movement.
Yeah, well said. Yep. And you had said earlier that, it's like no one can really do it for you. You have to experience something for yourself. There's only one way, really. Like Robert Frost said, the only way out is through,
And that might be a little scary. It might be a little intimidating for people, but that is exactly how we learned how to move when we were babies. Nobody said, oh my gosh, okay, here's these little baby barbells. Go ahead and do these bicep curls. Then put your hand here, and this is how you're going to roll over. We did it by exploring our environment and exploring and playing with movement. And that's how we learn.
Wow, well said. Yep, well said.
Well, Carolyn, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners? Anything you would like to say?
I want to say thank you. And it's really just, even since you reached out to me, it's such a pleasure. I love talking to other PTs, other Feldenkrais practitioners, people with similar interests. It's such a fascinating world we're immersed in. Sometimes feels like a big secret, right? Because the information is so internal sometimes. So thanks a lot.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It has just been so much fun connecting with you. Like I said, I feel like I've got a soulmate. There's somebody else who understands my language, So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And remember to stay curious, be interested in everything around you, especially how you move and how you feel. And that lifelong learning and paying attention to yourself is absolutely mind-blowing. And it can keep you healthy, fit, vibrant, and energetic for the rest of your life. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.